Did Plato really say, "Only the dead have seen the end of war"? I've uncovered the shocking truth behind this quote, and it's not what you think. This quote carries an eerie weight, doesn't it? It speaks to something deeply unsettling about humanity's relationship with conflict. But here's the first twist. Plato didn't actually say it. The real author was George Santayana, a philosopher and poet who included it in his 1922 work, Soliloquies in England. Now, why does this matter? Because words attributed to someone like Plato, a figure revered for his philosophical depth, can shape how we interpret their meaning. Santayana wasn't a classical philosopher like Plato, but his experiences during the devastating aftermath of World War I shaped his reflections. He saw war not as a temporary state, but as a recurring shadow in human history. Does that change how you feel about the quote? Let's dig deeper. Why is this line so often linked to Plato? The answer lies in the way great quotes travel through time. General Douglas MacArthur famously used it in a 1962 speech at West Point, crediting it to Plato. That moment solidified the association, even though historians and scholars later proved it wrong. But think about this. Does the misattribution dilute its meaning, or does it amplify it because of Plato's reputation? So what does this quote really mean? On the surface, it seems to suggest that war ends only in death, a grim, literal truth for anyone who's lived through conflict. But the deeper interpretation is more universal. It's not just about battlefields, it's about the struggles we face every day, conflicts of survival, power, and identity. Take this. When Santayana wrote those words, he wasn't just speaking to soldiers. He was reflecting on humanity as a whole. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever felt like peace, whether in relationships, work, or even within yourself, was impossible to achieve? That's the essence of what this quote confronts. It asks us, is peace just an illusion we chase but never truly grasp? This ties directly to human nature. Throughout history, conflict has been a driving force of change, for better or worse. Philosophers like Heraclitus argued that war is the father of all things, suggesting that growth often comes through struggle. But that leaves us with another haunting question. If conflict is so ingrained in who we are, is it something we can ever truly overcome? Now, before we go further, I want you to think about this. If death is the only true escape from conflict, what does that say about how we should live? That's not just a philosophical question, it's deeply personal. It forces us to confront the way we deal with challenges and the meaning we attach to them. Let's pause here and reflect. I've shown you the roots of this quote, its true author, and how it relates to both war and the battles within ourselves. But there's so much more to unpack. What inspired Santayana to write these words, and what lessons can we take from them today? Stay with me, because we're just getting started. What inspired Santayana to write these haunting words? To answer that, we need to step back into history, a time when the world was reeling from the devastation of World War I. Santayana observed the brutal cycles of war and peace, noting how nations repeated the same mistakes, generation after generation. The pain of that era wasn't just physical, it was existential. People began questioning the very nature of humanity. Why does war keep happening? Can we ever learn, or are we doomed to repeat history? This wasn't new. Thinkers like Plato wrestled with similar questions centuries earlier. In the Republic, Plato discussed the idea of justice and how societies could be structured to avoid chaos. Yet even in his ideal state, he acknowledged the inevitability of conflict. Justice, he argued, is fragile, constantly tested by human ambition and power struggles. This fragility is what connects Santayana's quote to Plato's philosophies. But here's the twist. Santayana wasn't just influenced by ancient ideas. His own era was a crucible of change. The Industrial Revolution had transformed warfare into something mechanized, impersonal, and far more destructive. The horrors of trench warfare in World War I weren't just about death. They symbolized how disconnected humanity had become from its own conflicts. Leaders made decisions miles away, while soldiers suffered and died on the front lines. This, Santayana believed, was war's greatest tragedy. It evolved, but it never truly ended. Think about it this way. Imagine a fire that spreads uncontrollably, consuming everything in its path. You can douse it in one area, but embers always remain, ready to ignite again. That's how Santayana saw human conflict, a cycle that keeps reigniting no matter how hard we try to put it out. Now let's look at how this quote gained its fame. General Douglas MacArthur's speech at West Point wasn't just a random mention of Santayana's words. He used it to remind future military leaders that war is constant, and their responsibility is not just to fight, but to prepare for the inevitability of conflict. MacArthur's use of Plato's name lent the quote an air of ancient wisdom, making it unforgettable, even if it was inaccurate. Here's the real problem, though. By associating it with Plato, we risk oversimplifying its meaning. Plato's works were about striving for an ideal, while Santayana's quote is far more grounded. It's a mirror held up to human failure. But does knowing its true origin change how we feel about it? Or does it make the quote even more powerful, knowing it came from someone who saw war as a chronic human flaw rather than an abstract philosophical debate? This isn't just history, it's a reflection of the world today. Think about the conflicts we see now. Ideological battles, cyber warfare, geopolitical tensions. Are they really any different from what Santayana observed a century ago? And if they're not, what does that say about our ability to learn and grow? We've explored the historical and philosophical roots of this quote, but its impact goes beyond context. In the next section, we'll examine why it remains relevant in a world where conflict keeps changing shape but never disappears. What does that mean for us today? Stay with me, because this is where it all comes together. In today's world, Santayana's words, "Only the dead have seen the end of war," remain strikingly relevant. Conflicts persist globally, from geopolitical tensions to ideological battles. For instance, the ongoing war in Ukraine has led to significant mental health issues among soldiers and civilians, including depression and insomnia. This raises a pressing question. Is peace an unattainable ideal for the living? Santayana's quote suggests that true peace is elusive in life, attainable only in death. However, this perspective doesn't mean we should resign ourselves to perpetual conflict. Instead, it challenges us to actively pursue peace, even when it seems out of reach. Modern efforts, such as international treaties and organizations dedicated to conflict resolution, demonstrate that while complete peace may be difficult, striving for it is essential. On a personal level, this quote encourages us to reflect on our own lives. We all face struggles and conflicts, whether internal or external. Recognizing that conflict is a part of life can help us develop resilience and a deeper appreciation for moments of peace. This understanding can lead to personal growth and a more profound sense of purpose. The emotional impact of this quote is significant. It resonates with those who have experienced the harsh realities of war, such as veterans and survivors. For example, Palestinian widow Nuha Atieh shares her experiences of trauma and fear, reflecting deep psychological scars from violent conflicts. The quote's stark truthfulness evokes strong emotions, prompting us to consider the cost of conflict and the value of peace. By the way, have you ever wondered if ancient thinkers like Seneca could foresee the problems we face with modern consumerism? His insights about materialism and living a meaningful life might just challenge everything you've been told about what it means to be happy. If that intrigues you, you'll want to check out the next video where we dive into what consumerism doesn't want you to know through Seneca's timeless wisdom. In conclusion, while Santayana's words may seem bleak, they serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of striving for peace. They challenge us to confront the reality of conflict and inspire us to work towards a more peaceful world, both globally and within ourselves.